to our Saturday afternoon panel with veterans and first responders. We have Russell Granger, Alex Adams, Sky Epperson, Brian Brossi, and Tiffany Christine, and we've got Bean and Amanda Held, of course, who's not feeling good, but boy, Bean is sure cute as a button. So I'll let the panel take over and talk a little bit about what they do. There you go.
Okay.
She'll sound breathy and sexy.
Hi, my name is Amanda Held. I am the founder of HEALS, which stands for Healing of Our Veterans Equine Services. And we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans heal through the power of rescue forces. And it started 22 years ago when I adopted my first Mustang named Shelby, who we still have at the farm today. And Shelby brought something special out in me that traditional therapy couldn't. And it's been a long journey of doing this work on myself and then sharing the same work with now 500 veterans who come through our program since 2017. And we provide 5-day healing intensives where we fly veterans in from all over the country at no cost to them. And they go through our intensive program that incorporates mindfulness practices, some book work, and most importantly, the work with horses. And I could talk about the program all day, but I was very blessed this time to bring 2 of our alumni here with us, and to hear their stories is just so powerful. So I'm going to pass it over to Tiffany.
Hi, will you tell me your story?
So just you can introduce yourself and just talk about the moment for you with the horse.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Christine. I'm an alumni of Who's, and I'm also the Director of Outreach and Impact at Who's. I'm an Army veteran, active duty Army, 10 years. And I guess when I came to Who's, Who's was my last chance. I had tried other programs, and they benefited me to an extent. But I think that at a point in your healing, you want that moment, that breakthrough moment, that aha moment. And I'll have to take you back, I guess, to 2019 when I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. And in 2019, I found myself standing on the bridge over the Eisenhower Expressway, contemplating how I could be the hood ornament of the next semi that rode past. I was in a hospital program that saved my life. But it wasn't until I came to Who's that I realized I wasn't really living that life. And it was a 2,200-pound Percheron named Tulip who would not let me move past the darkness that I had refused to face. I don't take anything from clinical therapy and the work. It gave me my life on this earth. But Who's gave my life new meaning and new purpose. In that if Who's didn't work, I was just content to be a broken toy in the world. But because those horses had a life and they were given a second chance at life, they now help veterans give new purpose to their life, which is really what all we want, is to have purpose and connection again. I'm sorry.
You're all right.
I don't know. supposed to heal so that I can help other people heal. And I went through programs where there were veterans working there. And one thing that I realized through all of those programs was that for them, that program made a profound impact on them. And I wanted that same thing. I wanted some place that was going to make such a profound impact on me that there was no way I would ever shut up about it. And that I could give another veteran an authentic story and not just sell them a gimmick or sell them some clinical research. And I don't take anything from that. Again, I don't. But what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And when you're so far in the bottom of the dark pit and you're in the bottom of the well and you hear the voices, but you just don't know how to help yourself get out the well, you just want somebody who knows how to get out the damn well. And here, those persons help us get out the well. They give you a lifeline that's undeniable, that's true, and that you cannot avoid if you want to heal. If you want to get out the well, they send you the lifeline to get out the well. And they help you, and they stay with you. And to look in that moment when I was trying, the moment came. It started when I tried to get her from the arena back to her pasture, back to the herd. And her high priority, her top priority is her herd. She doesn't like to be away from her herd. But in that moment, she wouldn't move. She just took her time, literally walking maybe 500 feet from this wall to that wall. It took me 45 minutes to get her there. I felt like a failure. I felt like, what's wrong with me? I felt all the things. But what we learn at Hooves is that find why this is coming up and find the beauty in the difficult things. And so the challenge was to get her across. But the challenge was admitting to myself that I never stood still long enough to face the things I needed to face to save myself. I never allowed myself to stand still because it's too dark. It's too painful. Who wants to go there again? And I was tired of going there. I was tired of telling my story to every therapist and every person who said they could help me, but never did. Because I went home every night and I just wished I didn't wake up. And it's worse to me to feel like you don't want to wake up than to ever just hold a gun and say, I'm going to do this. And that's horrible. But I just gave up. And the will to live is the strongest thing. It's the strongest power. If you give up your will to live, you've given up life. And every day I wore a mask, dying behind that mask. And I showed up, and I was dying. And I raised my kids, and I was dying. And I did all these things. I got my master's, and I did all these things, and I was dying. But then I met that horse. And now I'm trying, everybody said, live. Just go and start living and rewrite the next chapter. I don't know how to write the next chapter. I don't know what to say. I don't know. I've lived this long, broken. I don't know how to live as a fixed toy. I don't know what that feels like. I've been broken so long. But the horse gave me, and the work that Amanda did, it helped me to, as she says it, to rewrite the blueprint. I didn't have a blueprint. Everybody, when you start building, you start with a blueprint, right? You start with something, an outline, a foundation. I didn't know what that was for me. What does that look like for me? I didn't know. And I know that there's so many veterans out there struggling the same way I struggle. I see it with the work we do. I see how people come in ready to buy a faster motorcycle so they can drive it into off the road and crash. This is what they come, and I know that feeling. And the horses don't know about suicide, but they know about our energy and what we bring. And if we just take the moment to be as real and just let it out, they can take it. Finally, there's somebody who can take it. There's something. Never knew it was be a horse, but it is. And so today, I came here and I continue to talk about hooves because nobody told me that there was life after. Nobody told me that to show me the way to live this new life until I got to this work. And so everybody should know about it. Everybody should know about a program. There's a program, that we all have the programs, and that's one for somebody. For me, it was hooves. For Brian, it was hooves. For the other 498 veterans that we served. It was our program. And mental health is real. The veteran struggle is real. And those horses, hearing their story of how they used to barrel race and be champions and all that, we can connect to that. We understand what it's like to be at the top of our game, at the top of our industry, being proficient and winning awards and saving lives. We know what that feels like. But when that's all taken away, what do you do? What's the next step you take after the day after that? Many of us don't know because that's all we know. Just like those horses, all they knew, they were bred to be champions. We have Secretariat's great-grandson or grandson or something like that. So he's bred to be a champion. So what does he do the day he finds out that his hips are bad or whatever's wrong with him, that he can't do that, the thing that he's bred to do? What do you do? Somebody needs to be there to help the veteran find what to do. The day after they wake up and they realize they can't serve anymore. And I just want to make sure that our program and every other program is still around when the next veteran wakes up the next day after their service is ended, to help them find that new purpose and live. That's all I want.
My name is Brian Brazzi. I'm a U.S. Army infantry veteran. My journey to Who started on September 22nd, 2021, when my son put a .308 rifle into the roof of his mouth and pulled the trigger. He was 16 years old. In that one phone call, in that moment, I died in that moment, and all I could do was want to join him. I wanted to be with him, and I often say that I was a dead man walking when I finally found my way to Hooves. But I can't possibly really put into the right words to understand when I say I was a dead man walking. There was nothing there anymore. And I have 2 other daughters. I was in a relationship with a beautiful woman, positive relationship at the time at least. And it was, I had all these things around me, but my son was gone. And I felt ashamed, guilty that I was the kind of father that just lost a son to suicide. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to handle it. and it drove me to the absolute total rock bottom. She said it really well, that deep, dark well. Said it's a very unique feeling and place, and it's very hard to understand it unless you're someone that's been there, that really knows. It doesn't matter even somewhat of a good day, how much you're screaming you want to live, it still overpowers you, and you're ready to take your own life. All I wanted to do was join my son, not thinking about my daughters, not thinking about anybody else. I felt worthless as a man. I felt worthless as a father. And my brother had passed away, and at a funeral, a buddy of mine who I hadn't really seen since high school, he was an Iraq Marine veteran that went through another equine therapy type of service. He was the only one in the world. Nobody knew how I was, how bad I was. Nobody knew. And somehow he saw it. And he came up to me at my brother's funeral and said, "Brian, you need help." It was like getting drop kicked by Chuck Norris or something, you know? How did he know when nobody else knew? I thought I was doing such a great job of hiding that. My family didn't know. Literally nobody knew that I had planned on taking myself out, and it was with a motorcycle, going as fast as I possibly could into something. I didn't want anybody to know that I was committing suicide. I wanted it to look like I was in a fatal motorcycle accident. Where things started to turn around was the moment I basically went in through the gates at Who's. The documentary aired here last night. There's someone, she says something very, very powerful in that. Is that from the moment someone says, one of the veterans on the documentary says that the moment you pull into the gates, you start to feel better already. You already feel this, like, something powerful is going on here. And I still, when I pull into the Who's, get that feeling every time I pull in. I feel so much more comfortable and like me, just from the work that Amanda and the Who's staff and volunteers do. But my turnaround moment was with a beautiful Mustang. She's got a little bit of a belly, but she's affectionately known as Ellie with a belly. And, one of the biggest things was that I had lost my son. He was gone forever, gone. And I've never been one of those people that believes that, they're always there with you, or, I've never just been that person. And Ellie, I had an interaction with Ellie we do multiple meditations and workshops or worksheets, and she's better at explaining that stuff to me. I'm not good with my words when it comes to that stuff. But one of the meditations, we're sitting in camping chairs out in the pasture, and she kind of walks you through some breathing, close your eyes, just relax and let it be what it is for you. And Ellie walked up to me at one point and literally lifted her left front leg. Thank you for teaching me that part. Left front leg. I didn't know what to call it at first. And rested her leg right on my lap. Literally picked it up and rested it on my lap. No pressure, no nothing. And I believe it was for quite a while. I said 5 minutes yesterday. She says, I don't know, time was gone for me. She said about 20 minutes, Ellie actually had her leg on my two legs. Like literally just rested her leg right here. No pressure, no weight, no nothing. And I know it sounds crazy, but in that moment, I truly believe that was my son coming through Ellie. And that was really the beginning of me coming out of that deep, dark hole, because a lot of that deep, dark hole was, I'm alone, he's gone, I lost my son forever, who, anybody that knows me from when he was around, he was my mini-me, quite literally. We had the same personality, we talked the same, we messed with people, everything. I mean, it's almost like if he was my age, you would think we were identical twins. And I learned in that moment that I'm not alone, and that my son was with me, and that gave me enough strength to continue on through the teachings that Amanda does and the Who's program. I never would have imagined that in just 5 days, if you knew me from the moment I showed up there to what I was in 5 days, I mean, it's a total and complete transformation. My suicidal ideations were totally gone. Do I have bad days? Yes, I still have bad days. I think you would agree with that. I still have bad days.
I still have bad days.
But the thought of taking my life is gone. That suicidal ideation is gone. And I have a lot of work to still do to, live something like we've learned was living authentic to yourself, who you are. And I'm a testament to that equine services, we'll call it. Equine services does work. The judge over here has information on the scientific side of it. I'm more the proof is in the pudding kind of guy, and all three of us are proof that it works. And I can't say enough things, whether it's the Who's program or it's any other equine services program out there, that these nonprofits really need your help, and they are quite literally saving lives. And any information that you can spread to the public, anything that you can do to get that information out. Horses, Seen Through Horses over here, and the Horses for Mental, I don't want to mess it up, horsesformentalhealth.org, go check them out. They're doing really great things here, and I think it's a perfect fit for the Mustangs to go into some of these programs. I think it's a great, just the veteran side, the military infantry side, fighting for freedom. When you think of Mustangs, you think of a freedom, America, all of those patriotic things obviously come with it. But I've been very attached to the Mustang, or very attracted to the Mustang, specifically in the equine world, because of that, like being authentic, being themselves, running wild and free, that kind of thing. But I know that we have to round some of them up, and I can't think of a better place for them to go than to the equine services for veterans and mental health of all categories. And I wish more programs like what we're representing existed for all population types, not just veterans or first responders. Thank you for your time.
I'm Sky Upperson with the Mustang Adoption Academy. I had a big, huge speech that you guys were going to get to listen to, but there's not much to be said other than these programs work. These guys are proof of it. The biggest hurdle, I think, for all of us that run nonprofits, unfortunately, is money. And the second one is making sure that awareness that these programs work. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Did I make Sky speechless?
You did.
Woo! Round of applause for that
I'm Alex Adams. I'm from Colorado. I'm Alex Adams. I'm from Lake George, Colorado. We're with 10th Mountain Equine, and we do all kinds of wonderful fun things with equines, horses, ponies, draft mules, and people of all sorts. We have a veterans program. We work with groups like Boy Scouts and Boy Scouts of America, and with individual organizations. We have 9 horses at our rescue. We are on 28 acres at 9,300 feet in Lake George, Colorado. And we are off-grid, so everything that we do comes from the sun. We have a propane backup, but we are very self-sufficient. And our programs include methods that will allow people to be able to recognize themselves and recognize the way that they are seen in society or in their communities, and be able to use techniques that we have come up with to be able to help them to be able to modify their behavior to their wishes rather than just being controlled by their emotions, and being able to help them to be able to find new ways of being able to breathe a little more freely. I do a lot of what I call teaching a man to fish, even though, of course, we work with men and women. And what that means is we give tools to individuals who may need them for any variety of reasons. And then we help them to be able to, every day, be able to help themselves. We also do horse training and all kinds of fun activities like yoga on horseback and all sorts of wonderful stuff that can help people be able to find who they are with the help of horses.
My name is Russell Granger. I'm also with 10th Mountain Equine. Alex is my other half. And Alex is the clinician side of our organization. There's more than just the two of us, but we're the ones that live on property. I'm more of the academic side, the administration side. If you live off-grid and operate with solar, the house is like a big machine, really. And just like any machine, things break. And when things break, then it becomes like a catastrophe. One little thing breaks, and all of a sudden, the solar's down, so that means you don't have water, you can't water the horses, you don't have lights, it just becomes a catastrophe. So I'm the guy that tries to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it as quickly as possible. I'm also the chief pooper scooper, and do that probably more than anything else. My background, I've been a district judge in the state of Colorado for the past 27 years, and I've done every kind of case you can imagine, from a traffic case to first-degree murder trials. And now I am semi-retired and have a contract with the state where when a judge has a conflict, can't do a case for some reason, then they call me, and there's several of us that do this, and then go all over the state, doing trials all over the state. So, from the academic side, I enjoy studying, and we have one of our directors is Dr. Gerke, and Dr. Gerke is one of the pathfinders of determining or finding evidence-based research and performing evidence-based research to prove that equine therapy works. And the reason that's very important is that for me, even as a judge, when I listen to these stories, I say, okay, equine therapy works for these three. How do I know equine therapy works for somebody else? If I'm going to initiate a program in the government, I want to know equine therapy is going to work on a very broad spectrum. And how do I know that? What's the evidence for that? And we all know equine therapy works. When we hear these stories, there's just no doubt that equine therapy works. And we all know that because we're all horse people. I got into equine therapy because I realized when I got my first horse, I would go after work, I'd go play with the horse, and I felt better after I played with the horse. So that's what started me looking into this. But when Alex and I first met with our probation department in my district, and so we met with our probation director and with the county attorney, we said we want to start doing equine therapy for people on probation and for kids that are going through the social services, foster home type things. We want to start doing that. Their immediate response was, okay, that sounds good. How do I know this works? What is your evidence that this really works? And they were seeking for something more than simply wonderful accounts. The accounts were absolutely important. They wanted something more scientific. And then we met Dr. Gerke, and Dr. Gerke provided that more scientific basis. And I want to go through with you very briefly, and where I can demonstrate to you, you'll have to trust me that this is in academic papers, but show you how we know that this works. And the way we know this works is if you measure your heartbeat You can count your pulse and so forth, but there's another measurement of your heartbeat, which is your heart, the heart rhythm analysis. The way the heart rhythm analysis works is if you look at an EKG, you see the lines going up and down, right? But when it goes up, that's called the T wave, when it shoots up. And then it comes down and it goes back up, that's another T wave. Well, we measure the distance, the time distance between those T waves. And we can determine what that rhythm is. And when we determine what that rhythm is, if that rhythm is very, very consistent, it's a sign of imbalance or stress. If that rhythm is not consistent, it's a sign of more relaxation. And although that may sound somewhat counterintuitive, if you think about it, if you have a drum or if you're beating on your knee really quickly, when you're going really quickly, that's very uniform. And that's more stressful. If you're doing it more slowly, like that, that's more relaxed. And your heart works that way. And this is something that we can measure. It's not difficult to measure. You can actually buy an app that fits on your phone. So we have that app. And that app is statistically reliable. It's within a margin of error that makes it statistically reliable. It's like $10. And we can measure somebody's heart rhythm before they do a session, during the session, and after the session. And after we do that with a number of people over a 9-week period, we can get a pattern, and we can see a consistent pattern. And we've also gone back to people after they've been out of a program for several months, and their variables are still in a better place than when they started. And what we can conclude from this is that equine-assisted therapy works. We can prove it. And we can also prove it's long-lasting. And that's better than a pharmaceutical, because pharmaceutical wears off and then you're right back. Equine-assisted therapy continues on and on. And so when Alex and I, and Dr. Gerd, we did a presentation at the judicial conference a number of years ago and met with the judges in the state, all the judges in the state. Did the same type of presentation, kind of what I'm doing now, and went through to prove this, because their questions were the same as everybody else's. Their questions said, okay, if I'm going to start this in my district, I got to know it works. Otherwise, we can't justify the tax dollars going to it. And so we went through this program, and then after the program, we went out on the lawn, and we brought one of the ponies, and went out on the lawn of the hotel where the conference was, and did an equine therapy with the judges. And we had several Supreme Court justices that were standing next to the ponies and putting their hands on the ponies and going through an equine therapy. And so when you combine that analytical, somewhat maybe boring, I don't know, I find it interesting, but that analytical scientific evidence, because you can't change your heart rate variable. No matter how much you want to think about it and change it, you can't do it. It's something that is truly not just subjective, but it's something that's truly objective, and it works for everybody. When you combine that with the stories like we've heard here today, combine those two things, then you have a very compelling argument that this is effective. This works. This is something that we all need to look at. If we want to help veterans, if we want to help first responders, this is something that works. And so that's what we do at 10th Mountain Equine. That's one side of it, is the research side. The other side is, like Alex is saying, is the actual practical, and that's in both sides.
Any questions? No questions.
I was about to say, I'm Phyllis Turkeyville, I'm with the Horses and Humans Research Foundation, and we funded 3 different veteran studies, so there's more proof out there. But also, if you go to our website, we have a link to Science Open, so any open research on veterans is in our collection. We have over almost 700 articles right now. They vary from any type of equine assisted services studies, as well as equine well-being. But I'm applauding y'all because I hope that we do have more, and that's part of what we do, is so that we can help support you with research, so that you can write grants to get funding. So,
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
My question is, what do you guys think are some of the obstacles or challenges for veterans? I mean, even if they become aware of it, is there something that's stopping them from wanting to try it or go to one of these types of programs? Or what are some of the obstacles to getting this out there?
Well, I can say just from my experience, and if you've seen our documentary, I think Dave does a good job of saying it. And we also have a guy that came through in August, Mike, and he's a higher level executive at Worthington Steel, and one of his troops was struggling. They were both Marines, and he said, well, I think this sounds like some hokey BS. And I don't know how a horse could ever help me, but my guy's struggling, and Marines are very loyal. And he came through, and now he's hilarious, because he's like, now I do all the things woo. But I think, and we talked about this a little bit last night as well, even with people that have horses, if you've never been with horses in this experiential environment, it's just different, and people don't always know or understand the sentience of the horse. And yeah, I want to hear what these guys say too, but I definitely think that people think it's hokey, like especially veterans, because that, and number two, by the time people get to us, they've literally tried everything else. And so a lot of times people show up without hope, which is where I like to get them, because then the expectations are low, right? And then that's when they can really be impressed, because we know that it works.
is there some kind of training, like when you leave the service, isn't there like a transitioning?
Absolutely not.
Wait. I think they're supposed to be. I just wish we could get to those people who are who's supposed to be counselors or staff that help with transitioning and say, look, here's a resource you can use.
Well, there is job transitioning, so I know the Army has skill bridge, right? But the military is focused on what can we help you do next, but never, there is no program that I'm aware of that helps you learn how to be, you know? And so, yeah, if you've been to Iraq, you've been responsible for $10 million of equipment, you know, you've saved people's lives, and then you get home and you go work in an office where people complain about stuff, and you're like, you don't even know what it's like to struggle, or, you know, or people talk to you like you haven't just saved 10 people's lives on the other side of the country. So I think a lot of veterans start to feel really insulted or like resentful at the way that civilians are, because we run in a certain way. We live in a certain way. We have a lot of unspoken codes and expectations. And it's why I also love the Mustang so much, because if we look at the parallels of the Mustang, you know, these Mustangs are wild. They run in bands. They're constantly in fight or flight because they're trying to survive. There's all these unknown variables, and then we go and get them, and we put them with other horses, and they're like, well, you look like a horse. Why don't you act like that horse? Right? And so it's kind of that same level of expectation of, like, we've just experienced things that people can't understand, and being understood or feeling understood is essential for connection. So we lose the ability to connect with society because we've never learned how to manage those expectations, and I think that's a big part of it. So I'll let these guys speak to that.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think the number first is mindset. We're not trained to be weak. We're trained to be strong. We don't to admit, first of all, that I'm struggling mentally. That's weak. You can lose your career over that. Like, that's not something you do. So you can't, for me to get out of the military today and then think that I can admit that I'm struggling, that's not good. That doesn't happen. It takes for veterans to show veterans. the way. It takes for people like us to reach out to them and say, listen, we served, we know. And it's not about getting them, like, when you go through clinical, it's like the label. I can't put that label on me because I lose my clearance. I can't put that, we can't do that, you know? And so, because I got out doesn't mean that that mentality changed. You know, you're gonna have to, you have to go into the well before you realize I've lost my wife, I've lost my kids, I've lost my job, there's nothing else. That's when you can only look up. You see the light, you just don't know how to get to it. And we are taught to disconnect from our head from our heart. The military didn't issue us a family. So it doesn't care about our family. It cares about the mission. We're mission trained, and that's what we do, we execute. Anything other outside of that is dangerous. Lives are at stake. We're NCOs. We're responsible for equipment, lives. We can't be anything but focused. And so the number one thing is the mindset shift. Yes, there's a program to assist us to transition out, like Amanda said, in jobs. But like I said, nobody tells you who to be in the civilian world. Nobody tells you how to fully reconnect. Because see, especially active duty, we're gone so much. Like our families are used, you know, you get used to that. You know, one of the redeployment things that they do is with the family is to help you to reintegrate into your family. Because the wife's been there, she's been the single parent, now you want to come back in, you're dad and you want to be, you know what I'm saying, you want to be dad. But they've already started to function for 6 to 9 months without you. So you're struggling in that, you know what I'm saying? So it's a lot that it's just not a one and done. It's not stamp a label on it, PTSD. No, it's a lot more than that. It's a lot more intricate than that. But it has to, we have to figure out how to bring like therapy into the transition time for them. But they're not gonna, I don't want to give you anybody false hope that because you put a clinical, because you say, okay, part of your out processing is that you go see the psychologist, then they're not going to tell you anything. They're just not, you know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. It's going to take them literally to kind of go through some things to break them down, to see that they need help. You know what I mean? So.
Go ahead. I was also a firefighter EMT for 15 years in a volunteer fire department. Worked on an engine as well as the ambulance rescue. And we had an issue which, I mean, I wasn't going to mention it because stuff that we went through just pales in comparison to what these three have gone through. But we had an attitude, once you've been on the department for a while, you know, if you see something that's just really horrible, you know, where I was at, we had most of our calls were on I-70. And so we had just horrific accidents, you know, just horrible car wrecks. And if you'd see something that you just thought was horrible, if you can't handle that, then you need to get out the department. I mean, that was pretty much our attitude. And I remember one call that I was on where a state trooper, it was a fatal state trooper, and really messed me up. But there's no way in the world that I was going to go. I was a lieutenant at that time. There's no way in the world I was going to go talk to a mental health professional. We had them, but there's just no way I was going to do that because, again, if I did that, then I would catch flack. And again, if you can't handle it, if you can't handle a fire, don't get in the fire department. That's just the way it is. If you can't handle a horrific car accident, well then, for heaven's sake, don't get on a rescue, because that's what you're going to see. On the other hand, if my chief had said to me, you know, Russell, that was a pretty rough call, You know, we have this thing with horses. I'd like you to go out and play with a horse for a couple of hours with somebody. I probably said, sounds kind of hokey, but sure, I'll do that. I'll go play with a horse for a couple of hours. And so, at least from the first responder side, it's just an attitude similar to what they're describing, just an attitude of, we don't need that because we're firefighters and we're tough and we just don't need it. And I think from my side, from what I saw, that's the obstacle for the first responder side. It's just an attitude of invincibility and just don't need it.
I think some of that obstacle too comes down to where the individual gets their care. So like the VA, for example, there's not enough information through the VA process that a lot of veterans are relying on for their extended care outside of the military, that equine programs even exist. I had no clue it was even a thing until a buddy that went through one, word of mouth basically to me. So I think that's a big hurdle, why, you know, you don't, I think that's something that holds people up in itself, because lack of knowledge, they don't even know it exists. They don't know it's an option. And I hope, and over the course of the next several months, that we can start making some serious changes in that, you know, through the VA, where, you know, maybe the process of seeking out approval for things like these equine services being accepted in the VA healthcare system as alternative treatments instead of just the clinical or pharmaceutical methods. There's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of bureaucracy in that, and a lot of red tape, and it's very difficult to break that. I think we got a good game plan coming up here, and I know at least for me it's a personal mission, and I know there's probably several others that are dedicated to trying to cut through that red tape and make it happen.
Try to speak real quickly on both of those questions. One, the military spends 8 to 10 weeks basically changing your neurological pathways to perform in one way, and that is the mission. And when they come out, they don't spend 8 to 10 weeks retraining your neurological pathways to work in a way that works with our civilian society. And so they have a huge, they're wandering around trying to figure out how the hell to fit into society when their brain is still on the mission. And then, like with our program, it is not advertised as a mental health program because, again, that label is a huge thing to the veteran. We're inviting them in to learn our horsemanship and help us gentle the Mustang. And the parallels then that can start to occur between the Mustang and the veteran both not wanting to step into the world that they find themselves in, and then learning some things about tolerance levels and how they work with education. They can start to help themselves. We don't help them. The horses help them. They help the horses.
And to Brian's point and to Sky's point, they actually kind of perpetuate that training when you get out, because they're only training you to go get a job. Like, they're just continuing you, teaching you how to then continue the mission, but in the civilian sector. So they're still not addressing any of the psychological stuff that they, you know, any of the reprogramming. They don't do any of that. And then to Brian's point, it is about the awareness from the VA. The VA, nobody in any of the programs that I went to were they directed there from the VA, from their VA clinician. Not one. The VA does not acknowledge it. Even, and I get it from the perspective, from their perspective, they can personally believe in it, and they'll tell you that, but they can't give you that what do you call it, referral. They can't refer people to Amanda. They can't refer people to Scott. You know, and so how do we change that? It's research. But they won't research non-clinical, like they won't fund the research for non-clinical programs. So it's like we're in that catch-22, and hopefully that's going to shift soon, so that, you know, we're not losing as many. I just think it's a travesty that we're still losing as many veterans to suicide as we are.
22 a day.
A day.
A day.
And in somebody's documentary, recently we just saw that like 22 a day for 7 months or something like that was like 4,000 or.
Oh no, we just started an email chain. So when people subscribe to our website, they get a series of videos that educate them on different things. And so I do a welcome video when you join. We call it Journey with Hooves. And then 21 every 3 days for 21 days you get a video. And on the 22nd day, I did a second video, and part of that video is, 22 days ago you joined our journey, and since then 483 veterans have died by suicide. Every 21 days.
I've lost more people from my unit stateside than what I lost overseas. And I would say we're probably, I would say if we had a reunion and you brought us all back together, more than half are gone. And that's stateside.
They're casualties. They're still casualties.
So I had this dream. I really believe it can work. I really, really do. I think if we can create programs that are called wellness, and they're not therapy, we're going to bypass the stigmas that are associated with therapy and with weakness. When you say wellness, it doesn't sound like weakness. It sounds like, hey, I'm great, I'm fine, I'm just going to get better. And I really, really think if we just change that language, we can start to make some inroads. We can start to be able to help more and more and more people and give them a way to do it where they're bypassing the stigma. Where they're bypassing the stigma not only for their community or their organization, but for themselves. So they're not putting words on themselves like failure or loser or not good enough. Where they can actually say, I'm just going to get better. That's my dream. We can talk more about it. We've got a few more minutes. Did anybody up here have more you want to say? Do we have any other brief questions?
Yeah, do we have any other questions? I just have one thing I wanted to say, but I want to see if we have any questions first.
It's not a question so much as that there are parallels, I think, with serious illness. People don't understand it if they're not in it, and so you can't communicate it to people who are not in it. And sometimes people don't want to listen to what you're going through. And so it's interesting what you were saying, Tiffany, about how you have to talk to other veterans because they're the only ones who will understand your viewpoint. And the same is true with illness. I have multiple sclerosis, and I'm just signing a book contract to talk about the role of horses with serious illness. But that's the only way I can communicate it to some people, because nobody wants to know about the symptoms, about the weakness of this and the pain of that. Nobody wants to know about that. You have to find the central point where people will be able to say, oh, I get that, because I get that because. And so even though they're not in it, they'll find a link. And I love your language about changing the language to wellness. And God knows we're getting a lot of that in the mass media these days. Wellness this, wellness that. I'm supposed to talk about it. So this is the right time to change the language.